We are pleased to welcome back to Houghton Kevin and Cindy Austin. Kevin and Cindy are about 5 months into their new assignments. Kevin as church and missionary mobilizer, and Cindy as assistant to the European director, both for Global Partners. And these assignments come after they have served extended years in Germany and the Czech Republic. They're bringing recent reports about the projects that we supported in our 2023 Christmas Eve offering. And we're excited to hear how the sun is shining in Europe and beyond. Thanks.
Thank you, Wes. And I was just thinking this morning, I would like to really just say a huge thank you to Paul and the Missions Committee. It's just really a joy and a privilege to be here, but to see and really experience genuine love for what God is doing around the world, and not just like you don't think of them there, but you are engaged and you connect with all these missionaries that are represented over this weekend and beyond, and have for years and years. And it's truly an honor and a privilege to be able to share with you and to be a part of your team around the world. One of the thoughts that comes to my mind, I didn't share that in the earlier service, so get a little bonus this morning, or maybe not a bonus, we'll find out. Darkness, when you think of light and darkness, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind, in our minds, as we talked about this, have you ever experienced absolute, total darkness? Have you ever been in a place where it's just absolutely, the eclipse, it was dark.
It was cool.
It was really exciting, but there was light out there a little bit. You could see your hands, you could see buildings and things around a little bit. We had the privilege of being in a cave in the Czech Republic. It's called the Krast, and there we went down in, and they actually do concerts and everything, and as you go part way back, and the temperatures there, they explain everything, but they take you wander way, way back. There's a boat, part of it's on a boat. It's fascinating as you go back. And the game in this one huge room, and there was probably 20 in the group, and the person's leading us along, and that person would turn on and off lights as you moved along. We got out there, and then she wandered and left us, and then she announced through the PA system that we're going to turn off all lights. And she turned them off, and I could not see the hand on my face right there. I just couldn't see it. It was black. And she talked to give us a little bit of comfort for those who were a little nervous. We had a couple of our children with us. And then she said, we're going to turn on one simple little light, about like the equivalent of a match, about 40 feet away. And that came on, and it was fascinating to watch what it did and experience to that. And that's who we are. We're that little light. And you might feel like you don't have a lot to offer. You do. Just being the light of the world. Gracie's little video was so prevalent, so important to what we want to do. Live life. Live Christianity. Live what Jesus is to you out in the public eye. And God will take that light of you and just spread it and move it about in people's lives that we may not even know about. We are the light of the world. And what a privilege it is to have God filling us, enabling us to communicate that here, there, and wherever it might be.
Obviously, Europe is heavy on our hearts, and we are so encouraged to see what has happened just in the last few years with the Wesleyan Church in Europe. Lots of seeds have been planted, missionaries have been going, missionaries have left. Short-term teams have gone and returned, but we do see light remaining. One of the really cool things that I got to witness in person a few weeks ago, I went over to help set up for a conference that's coming, and it was the establishment of the European Wesleyan Association. So the church is now officially organized and registered because we have more missionaries in the Czech Republic. That's the country where the registration happened. But a cool thing that is just getting started is that the pastors have committed to meeting together, whether they're from Croatia, Poland, Austria, Czech Republic, the UK, to praying together for each other once a week on Zoom. Next week, Kevin and I are going to Europe together. It's a lot more fun to go back over together. And we're going to be part of the Euro Gathering. This is a gathering of believers in our Wesleyan churches across Europe. And for a few weeks, we only had about 20 people registered, and it was only missionaries. And we thought, well, we'll have fun, but that's not the point. But now we have 72 adults and 7 kids that have registered and are all going to be together for 4 days in May. They come from 6 different countries where we have nationals that are coming, and then missionaries from 4 more countries. It'll be a time of encouragement and equipping and sending. But what we're especially excited about is that a young family that we had the blessing of getting to know them before they knew Jesus, when they would tell us, we're curious, but we're atheists, we're Czech. But then we can't explain the hope that you have. And so from that, now they are registered and going to this conference. It will be the first time for either of them to be in a room with more than 20 Christians, to be in a room with Christians from other countries besides the U.S., and it will be a time for them to share their testimony and encouragement to other Europeans.
The sun is shining in all of Europe. Specifically, the sun is shining in the Czech Republic. And this church has taken a Christmas offering for years. And this year, they chose to bless a ministry called Media to Movement. I finally got that right, first try. Media to Movement. And there's a video that is just going to be shared right now. So just turn your attention to see what God did with your Christmas offering, part of it.
Hi, Houghton Wesleyan. This is Luke, and on behalf of the Media to Movement project here in Czech Republic, I just want to say thank you so much for your support. Your prayers and your finances have meant that thousands of people across Czech Republic have been able to see content online about the story of Jesus and been invited into a relationship with him where they otherwise would not have that opportunity. So thank you for the ways that you are here with us on mission. The reality in Czech Republic is that less than 2% of the population would say that they are a follower of Jesus. And that means for a majority of Czechs, they could go their entire lives without ever actually meeting a believer of Jesus. Our vision as a project is that we want to give the opportunity for every Czech to know the story of Jesus, to be invited into a relationship with him, and to join the mission that he has for each of us. And we are excited that God is allowing us to use social media in that effort. We create ads that don't want to debate or argue online. There's plenty of other people that do that better than we can. But we want to create ads and content that stirs curiosity in people so that those that are truly spiritually seeking would click on our ads, would start a conversation with us, and ultimately would meet with a disciple maker who would read the story of Jesus with them. And we are excited that God is using these things. This last year, we had it as a goal that 25 people would meet with a disciple maker, whether online or offline. And we are excited to say that exactly 25 people met with a disciple maker this last year. And we know that God will continue to use these efforts into the future. Just this last week, on one of our Tuesday online meetings, a woman joined who read the story of Jesus, discussed how she could apply it to her life, and said, I want to know more. I want to know more about this character of Jesus, and I want to follow him. And she took a step of faith that evening, and the disciple-making process has begun with her. So we're excited. We know that God is using this, but we also ask that you would pray for wisdom, because the reality is online is just a wild place. I'm sure a lot of you know. Things are changing constantly online, whether rules about ads and content, or even just the cultural fads that are happening, that we want to create ads that are relevant, but also true to the message of what Jesus is saying. So please pray for wisdom for us as we create that content, but we also need wisdom as there is a lot of barriers to go from online to offline. There's people that are willing to meet online that aren't willing to meet offline. So we want to steward the relationships that God has given to us, but also stay focused to say that we truly believe when a person goes offline and meets in a community of believers, that life transformation and disciple making can truly begin. So we would really ask for your prayers in those areas and prayers for wisdom and discernment into the future. But again, we are so thankful for your support, thankful for the ways that you have enabled this project to happen, and we will continue to keep you updated with what God is doing into the future. So thank you.
It's just a fascinating ministry, and Poděbrady, which is it's a little town, 14,000. It's about an hour due east of Prague. And within our community, obviously, there are some believers. Czech national believers is what we're looking for to meet with people when they become curious. And 3 people out of that 25 actually were within our area. And now, currently, 2 of those 3 are meeting in the city of Prague. We drive in, or we don't. There's a Bible, so I should say it this way, there are about 4 or 5 people that come from Prague that join our congregation in Podjebrady. They're believers. And because they live in Prague, they started a new DBS Discovery Bible study in Prague, incorporating these 2 individuals into that Bible study. And so now they are in a disciple-making process. Where God will lead that, we don't know. But that's what Media to Movement allowed us to discover these people, among other ways. And it's just an awesome experience. And so thank you, again, on behalf of Media to Movement.
The sun is shining in Austria. We had the privilege of being able to donate a whole lot of our things when we were moving back to a refugee center there. And it's called Mosaic. And it's a place where refugees and new immigrants can come in, sit down for coffee, Turkish coffee. They can visit with somebody. There's hope. There's help for kids with homework. There's a way for them to be involved in different craft classes, language classes. And yesterday, the kids that were here had a chance to do a Zoom chat with one of our missionaries, one of the families, with Kendra and her daughter Anna Culver. And these missionaries are working with other missionaries throughout the city of Vienna to be an outreach to these refugees. And these people come from Muslim countries, from war-torn countries, and so this is a place where the sun shines very brightly.
The sun is shining in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Stacy and Courtney have a little video clip to say thank you, because part of your Christmas offering went to M2M, and another part of it went to Bosnia and these 2 young ladies and what they're doing.
Hey Houghton Westland, my name's Courtney.
And I'm Stacia, and we are working here in Eastern Europe. And we want to thank you for your generous giving to the work here. Because of your giving, we are able to pursue new avenues of ministry here in Eastern Europe.
In this past season, we have been researching and exploring the community's needs while praying and discerning what God wants to do next year. During this time, we have sensed God leading us to open a community center that will empower people to be a part of making changes in their community, all while creating opportunities for people to seek Jesus.
The Community Center will include many locally led projects working with the next generation, mental health, education, seminars, camps, and much more. It will enable us to engage in the community and find those who are seeking Jesus.
And we're hopeful that this entity will enable us to offer Bible studies, biblical seminars, worship and prayer opportunities, discipleship opportunities, and hopefully one day, a church. Because of your giving, we can establish this new work and help people live abundant lives with Christ. So we say thank you, Houghton Westland.
We appreciate your prayers as we close the World Hope office this June and continue to seek legally establishing this new work this summer. And as always, seek those locally desiring to know Jesus personally.
God is doing something new in our midst here in Eastern Europe, beyond anything we could ever ask or imagine. And he has good things in store. We are so grateful to partner with you in the work that God is doing all around the world to further his kingdom and make his name known.
Those 2 women are such an encouragement to us. The sun is also shining in Ukraine through churches there that have set up light hubs to be ministry to the areas around them, and to Ukrainians who fled the country at the beginning of the war that came to the Czech Republic. We had a huge number that would come by train, take hours and hours to get to Prague. It would normally take about 6 or 7 hours, but it would take sometimes over a day. And our pastor, Pastor Tomas, was so anxious to be involved in helping that he would drive to the train station and then he would just wander around and ask people, do you need a place to stay? Do you need a place to stay? And then he'd fill up his van and he'd bring those people to our apartment. We were blessed with a big apartment, he has a small one. And over the course of the next several months, we had about 30 different women and children that stayed with us, some for a couple of days before they went on to another place, and some for several weeks until they found an apartment. Several settled actually just around the corner from our apartment in Poggiobrati. One of the young women that came because the building where she worked, it was a television station, it was bombed. She lost several of her colleagues. Her job, of course, was destroyed, and she was terrified. When she got to Prague, she was obviously very traumatized and needed a quiet place, and so she came and stayed with us. She spoke English, which was obviously a huge blessing for us to be able to really talk with her. But we also found out that she is an incredible counselor, and so we ended up having her come back. She had found a place to stay in another city, and then we had more refugees come that didn't speak any English, and so we asked her to come back and stay with us so that she could translate. She ended up being with us about 8 weeks and became kind of like a daughter to the two of us, and we prayed with her many times. She translated for us often in praying for other people in our home, and she now has a job and is living in Paris. And when we go back for the Euro conference next week, I asked our travel agent, just look to see how much extra it would cost to have a layover in Paris, because we'd really love to see her. And he wrote back and he said, well, actually, it'll save you $200 if you're willing. So we were willing, so we're gonna have 24 hours in Paris with our friend. She has a very tiny apartment, but she says, and you can have my bed and I'll sleep on the floor. So we're very much looking forward to seeing Evgenia and pray that we can continue to show God's light to her.
As Cindy was sharing that, just a couple of memories came back to mind to me during that time. And the very first morning, Evgenia was one of the first to come, and two others that they didn't know each other until they met at that train station. The train station is an amazing sight. It's a big train station in Prague, but it was just wall-to-wall refugees evacuating, coming out of Ukraine. And somehow Tomas would find these people and bring them. And so that night when they got in, or late in the evening, early in the evening, they got in, we talked with them, visited, and just said, breakfast in the morning, and Evgenia spoke fluent English so we could communicate. Wow, we thought this is gonna be great and easy. Later with all the other refugees, that wasn't so easy, but she came back and helped us. But that night, we said, how about breakfast tomorrow? Yeah, they were all excited about it. I said, what time would be good? 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? And they said, oh, I don't know, 9 o'clock would be great. So we were excited. We got up and we prepared a great big breakfast, and it was like 10:30 before they came out. And what they had been doing was sitting watching their iPhones to see if there's cities. And just to see what was happening to their homes. And then they came out, and their husbands, then they came out and they sat down, and Evgenia just ministered to them in a sense that was just amazing, and allowed us to witness and create a space where the Ukrainians could call home. They started cooking for us within 2 days. They took over the kitchen, and they just needed things to do. And what a privilege it was to be a part of that. Thank you to enable us to be there. The sun is shining in Africa. That's where Wesleyan World Missions got its start as far as going globally, internationally, into Sierra Leone. And then from there, it moved into a couple more countries over the years. And in many, many years, it was slow, hard, costly, life-giving work in those early years. And we were proud to say at one point, finally we saw that there were 7 nations that Wesleyan World Missions, global partners, had been able to see the church grow and start to thrive. But today, there are 28 nations in Africa that are being ministered to through the efforts of the Wesleyan Church, but it's not the Wesleyan Church North America. But those 7 nations have taken their love for God and crossed the boundaries within Africa, and they have added 21 new nations to the ministry of the Wesleyan Church, not from North America, but from other African nations. Everyone to everywhere. And it's just to see that and be a part of that and witness and see how that's happening. There are people in the Ibero, which would be South America, that area conference, general conference there, that are sending missionaries, Wesleyan missionaries, from there to Portugal, Spain, and France into Europe. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. We have seen in history, obviously, the Filipinos have joined and come over, and they're serving all over the place too, but they come to the United States. And you run into Filipino missionaries, Wesleyans, that are reaching out to North Americans, everyone to everywhere. And what a blessing to be a part of a church that thinks in that mindset that we don't have to point or plant North American churches anywhere, but rather let the nationals grow and evolve into their Wesleyan church and then let them do the outreach and move from there.
When we've been here in the past, we've talked about our neighbors. God blessed us with a wonderful place to live in an apartment right near a park, right walking distance to the train, to the church. But the best part was the neighbors that he gave us in our building. And it was a young couple, and they lived above us, but we hadn't really been able to figure out a way to get to know them. But one morning, Kevin had been out for a walk, and we had been recently being challenged to pray with people, not just for them. And on his way back, he noticed that our neighbors were talking with a young guy in a wheelchair. And Kevin nodded at him, said hello, and came on in, and then turned around and went back. And he said, could I pray for you? He didn't know their names. He wasn't sure what the relationship was. And the neighbor, who we found out a lot more, lived upstairs, she said, yeah, sure. And so Kevin prayed right then, just a short prayer for Martine. That was the beginning of a friendship where before too long, we were sharing meals frequently. We got to do a lot of life together. 1 month, they'd eat at our house. The next month, we'd eat upstairs. We got to know their mom, who lives next door. She's my age. She would cook for us, and we would just kind of rotate from place to place. Another family, the one where they had been atheists and then had come to Christ, they have committed to following up with those wonderful neighbors. And we had a couple Bible studies with the two families together before we left. It's a little chaotic. They both have 4-year-old girls that don't like to hold still and eat very quickly and then want to go and hide. But we had a chance to be together 2 different times with them and find all kinds of connections that were built in. Well, when I went back a couple of weeks ago for setting up for the Euro Conference, I was able to have a meal with those 2 families again. And I was really excited about this chance to do it and trying to figure out, should I try to do a Discovery Bible study like we had done in the past? And they said, well, Grandma Hannah, so the grandmother to our neighbors, great-grandma to the little girls, Grandma Hannah has something special for us. In the Catholic Church, there is an icon that has been copied and placed in many churches. It's in honor of King Václav, and it's a saint that you then invite to pray with you. And the grandma is a very devout, but very traditional Catholic. And we had always kind of wondered, what does she think about us inviting them to our church, which was meeting at a coffee shop and very far from traditional Catholic church. But Grandma Hannah had seen over the years that how we loved her kids and her grandkids and her daughter, who was really far from the church. And I think she sensed that even though our traditions are very different, we worship the same Jesus. And so she, as a favor to me, had said that she would loan us this very special icon. Well, as we were gathering for dinner, they said, you know what, when we finish our dinner, then we'll all sit around and we'll put this in the middle and we can have our prayer time. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm not really sure how to handle this. Kevin is not here. And I sent a couple texts saying, pray. I'm not really sure how this evening is going to go, and I don't want it to be something that is sad or frustrating for anybody. Well, when we had our meal, we were ready to eat, and the family said, well, of course we're going to pray. We always pray before we eat now, which had not been their tradition in the past. And then after we had a wonderful meal, we all had more food because Kevin wasn't there, but we also, and it was really good. We also had a lot less laughing because Kevin wasn't there, so we were all missing him very much. But then as the meal kind of ended, they said, well, it's time to pray. And I whispered another quick prayer, Jesus, help me. Well, he did, because the first little girl said, I'm going to pray. And she's a little girl, Kevin's actually her godfather, because the family decided to follow Grandma's tradition and get her baptized in the Catholic Church. And they asked Kevin to be the godfather because they said, there's no other man we know that wants as much as you do for our little girl to know Jesus. And so when this little girl said, I'll start the prayers, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Well, she prayed for everything. The salt, the pepper. She thanked God for her kindergarten, for her teacher, for the bathroom at school. She went on. And then the other little girl said, well, I want to pray. And she prayed and prayed and prayed. And then the first little girl wanted to pray again. So she prayed for more things that she had left out. And then the second little girl, and it went back and forth. And I was like, well, Lord, this is not the answer I was expecting, but I don't know what to do next. And then one of the dads, who we have never heard pray before, he said, I'll pray. And he prayed and just asked God to help him to be a good husband and a good dad and to help him know Jesus better. And then the other dad prayed, and both moms prayed, and I got to pray. And then everyone was like, well, that was really special. And I had to agree, God had answered my prayer, but it was so special to see how the light of Jesus is shining in those two families.
As we mentioned right at the beginning, the darkness still exists. With all that's going on around, it's obvious to be aware of it. And I've heard, and you probably have too often, the whole concept of 4 in 10 people have no access to the gospel message. No boots on the ground, no people there, no literature, and no Bible, no Christian literature. There's no way. There are no people that bring the message to them. And at 4 in 10, it's a significant number. It's over 3 billion people, actually. But I recently heard at Global Partners, 1 in 10 people have access to healthy food. Don't have access. I'm going to get that backwards. I would not like that. Anyway, so 1 in 10 people do not have access to healthy food. 2 in 10 people do not have access to clean water. 3 in 10 people do not have access to internet and Wi-Fi. And then 4 in 10 people do not have access to the gospel. And when that was being presented, it just really hit me in a different way. And I thought about, I won't do this, but if we had, 40% of you stand up in this congregation, and we could just look and see how many people it is that don't have access to the gospel. Well, Global Partners has determined that they are going to do all they can going forward with more focus on helping those 4 in 10 have access. And it's been an interesting process as we go forward with that. And what we have learned over these years is living life amongst the Czech people. One of our co-workers in Poděbrady, American couple working with World Gospel Mission, Kurt, they're from Alabama, and he used to say, we just need to live Jesus with the people. And that is what our goal has been and will continue to be. And we thank you for all that you do and how you live Jesus amongst the people here and around this area and beyond. And some of you just can't get out and fly over there into another place, and you don't need to, because you can help by giving, and praying is an important aspect of ministry that helps us. As Cindy mentioned, she texted people and said, pray. I don't know what's going to happen. And your prayers and people's prayers do so much. Holy Spirit reveals to us and helps us to know how to live life with the people around us. And we encourage you to continue in your journeys to live life to the fullest because of Jesus Christ in your heart, and share with the people that God puts in your life. Amen.